This week we looked at the grid layout and the flex layout. Now we've just seen how to make use of the flex layout. We've seen the drawbacks as well from Miss Anna's illustration. Now the flex layout is quite flexible. Sorry, the float layout is quite flexible, but the drawbacks is that it's not always responsive. So there are different types of situations we might find ourselves when we design our web page, and maybe when we have images, we have some blog content, they might not really fall in line the way we want them to. So that's why we make use of the grid view layout in when we design our web pages. So here I'm going to illustrate, or I'm going to create a page using the grid view layout, so we can see the difference between the grid view layout and the float layout that Miss Anna just illustrated. Now, she made mention of the different layouts or the elements layouts we have in HTML. So sometimes you may hear people refer to it as semantic elements. So HTML semantic elements, they are just like these elements we have seen already, like the body elements or the text elements. But these elements, unlike the text elements, they are focused on structures. So, for example, we've seen the header elements. It has an open and close tag, and basically the header elements holds all content that usually comes at the top of the web page. So we can structure our pages however we want. We may decide to have other elements before the header, or we could have the header coming before any other elements, or we could as well have other elements inside the header elements. So let's try something like that here. Now, aside from the header elements, we also have another structure element called the nav elements, and they are usually used for links, reference links or navigation links, especially when you want to go between pages, you want to go from one page to another. So those links, most times we structure them or we add them to the page using the nav elements. So if I have my header here, now I want to make sure that the nav is inside the header. So I'm going to create a nav element here, and the nav element is just written as the nav and has an open and close tag. Now I want to add content. I want to add links here that I would navigate to, maybe other pages, but I won't create other pages, but just for illustration purpose, so we can see how to make use of the navigation elements. So you've seen that we can as well use containers, but it's best proper we use the semantic elements to structure our web page. So let's have some links here. So I want to add an image to this nav. I want it to be the logo, so I would use a container for this. So we can dynamically use the elements, but it's best we use them where they best fits. For this case example, so I want to add an image, and for me to be able to make this image styled responsively, I want to put it in a container. So here I'm going to give a class, and this class will be for my logo. And I'm going to have a class here as well. and this will be for my nav bar. Now let's add our image. My image is in my image folder. I want to add the logo from my images folder. So I'll reference my images folder since I am in the root directory. And the name is called logo.png. And my alternate text will be, I'll just leave this as logo. Oh, yeah, just logo. Okay, so now I want to add a class to this image so I can also style the image properly. In this class, I will call it logo image. I'll close this so I see everything. Okay, I'm just going to add a heading here. And this will be for school. So assuming we're trying to create a school page, we're trying to create a website for the school. So I'll say School of Programming. Okay, now we're still in the navigation, so I could save this so we see how this looks like. Now, because we have not applied styles to these contents, it's just displaying everywhere on the page. But what we have here is that we have a container, and we have the header elements where we want to add all the contents that will make up our header. And we also have a nav element that was going to hold the navigations. So now inside this nav, I am going to have the different navigation links, and I also want to add my logo inside this nav container. So now let's add the navigation links to this container. So you can use containers to add links, or you could just add your anchor tags, that's the links, directly, but it's best if you always use well-structured elements for that purpose. So yeah, I'm going to use a list, an unordered list, and in the list, I'm going to make the list items my reference links. So I'm going to use the anchor tags inside the list. And here we could decide what the link would be. Let's say this would be for home. And there's no need for me to put a reference here, since this will still be the home page. So I'm just going to copy this, repeat this as much as I need to. Okay, so let's have an about page, services page, and contact page. So for each link, I want to style each link uniquely. So I always like to use classes for, so it depends on how you want to style your page. So I like to use classes for most of the elements, so I can uniquely style them without affecting other similar elements or related elements. So in the list, I'm going to have a class, and this will be for my nav menu. And for each list item, I want to have a class as well. Or to make it more specific, we can have the class inside the anchor tag. So I'm just going to say that I want each of them to have a class called nav link. So when we are applying these styles, we are going to see why we create specific classes for each element. Okay, now so this is for our navigation, and that's all I'm going to be adding to the header area of the page. So if I refresh my page, I'm just going to have the contents just the way they are applied or added, but because we have not applied the style or used any layouts, it still displays in a normal way. So let's just create the page content before we start using the different styles and the grid layouts on the page. So next, we have another element called the section. Section is also a structural element. So I'm going to, and section is just written as section, has an open and close tag. Now, sections, you can look at it as, let's say, the different areas of the web page. After you have your header, you could have several sections. You could have up to as much as you need or content you want to categorize in a particular area. So maybe the first section could be for an introduction. Second section could be maybe a peak view of services or peak information of the about page, stuff like that. So we can have as much sections as we want. Now in this section, I want to have another structural element called aside. So there is no specific convention when you want to use these structural elements, but they are important, so your codes are easily readable and easily to understand. Now I want to use another structural element called the aside. Now sometimes you may see the aside element outside of a section. It still works the same way. So we just follow according to the names of these elements. So you could look at it as whenever you want to use the aside, maybe you need to add an additional information on the page, on a particular side of the page, or you just want it to be on its own. So it depends on the type of page you're creating. But in this illustration, I just want to use it inside the section. And this section will be a role of its own, and I'm going to have other elements inside this section. So I'm going to use the aside elements, and I want to add some context to the aside. So first, I'm going to call this class side nav, because I want it to be on the side of the page. And I'm going to use a h2. I'll just call this sidebar. I'm just trying to put more content inside the page. Paragraph. And I'll say this is the sidebar content. And that will be for a side. And we are going to now use another structural element. And this one is called main. Now, this is mostly used in this scenario for the main content on that particular page. Let's say this is where the main content for the page, or what the page is about and what the reader is looking for. You could decide to put it in the main content. So in this case, I want to add a welcome message here. So, welcome to school. Let's copy this. So use a paragraph. And just so we know, this is the main content area. So I'll save this so we'll see what we've had so far. So now you can see this, because these elements are blocked by default, they have a block display. So until we apply our styles to them or add a CSS before we have them positioned properly. So they are displaying just defaults as we have added them. The sidebar heading, the content, the main heading, and its content. Okay, so I'm going to add an image called grid.png. Also be sample grid image. I'm going to use a class called main image. Okay, so this is all we're going to add here. We've added the aside, we've added main. So the next element we want to add here, instead of adding an article, because of time, let's just so the article could also be added in the section or outside the section. So it just depends on the type of page you're creating. I am just doing this because this is what I want for this particular page. So I am not going to use the article here, but so we know that there is also another HTML layout element called the article. So I'm going to use the footer for this last part, and I'll put the footer in a div. In here, I just want to, okay. So this would be copy. Yes. Okay. So let's just see how this displays first. All right, so the image I have added is a very large image, so it's currently taking a lot of space but not displaying properly. So we're also going to make sure that this image is responsive, because currently I am styling the web page or this page in a smaller screen dimension. So this is also a way to check if your designs are mobile responsive. Now, it's not the main way, but it's just one of the ways to check. So if I extend the screen, I would also see the rest parts of the image. But we want to make sure that we're designing a mobile first web page. So I would stick to this size and make sure that it's responsive. So we've gotten a footer. Now what's left is for us to add content to this page. Oh, okay. I have this in the wrong place. Okay. Now let's go to the styles. So if you I've seen the class lesson videos. You must have come across these CSS properties. So I'm just going to do maybe a quick explanation again for us to remember what they are for. So I have placed them here to prevent me from typing them all over again because of time. So now the box sizing selector is what we have here, and we have the selector that selects that universal selector. So that is going to select every element on the web page, and whatever we apply is going to be applied to all elements of the web page. Now the property box sizing determines how the width and the height of an element are calculated. Since we want to get a responsive web page, everything must be calculated. So by default, the width and the height of an element are calculated based on its content, just like we have here, and any padding and borders. Well, if you add the paddings or you add borders, so this can make it difficult to control the size of elements. So if we set it to border box or box sizing border box, it makes the width and the heights, including the padding and border, making it easier to manage the layouts and calculatable related to other elements on the page, because we are trying to look at how to make sure that this layout is not flawed. So we want every element to be well calculated. Now, for this part, we sometimes refers to clearing floats. So here we are creating a style. So this is a class called row, and we use a pseudo selector to add something after the row. So remember when we did pseudo elements, so this after targets the row class and adds a pseudo element after the content. Now the content here, which we have as property, is required for the after pseudo elements, but we don't have anything in it, so it doesn't actually add any content. But the clear bolts, this clears any floated elements within the row elements, preventing them from overlapping each other. So it's going to make sure that it stays a row and there's no other row overlapping it. So if we apply this class to any elements, it's going to take these properties of a row. And the display table, this just ensures that the row class element recognizes the floating children and maintains the correct height. So just like the way the table displays, it's no matter the content inside, the borders are always equal. So it's just going to take this table display property and make sure the rows are in equal borders. And then we have next class. This selector we have here is for the attribute selector. So it selects any element whose class name contains code. And this is just how we usually select attributes. Remember when we did forms, we're able to select some particular inputs according to their attributes. Now for the properties, the left float selects elements to the left and allowing other elements to wrap around it. So we've seen how the float element was used in the previous illustration. So this makes sure that all the wherever we add this class, it's going to first of all float to the left, and the next one we add it to will take the next space floated to the left. And the padding here just makes sure that there are spaces between them. All right, so now the media queries. This is for responsive design. So, or we could look at it as a responsive grid layout for larger screen, because what we have here is that we've set the mean width to 600 px. Now, I'll start from the Art Media query. So the Art Media here, Art Media only screen, and the mean width applies the enclosed CSS from here to here. Only when applies the enclosed CSS rules only when the screen width is 600 px or more. So if we have a like we have here, we have this screen size, and this screen size is currently more than 600 px. But what we're trying to do here is that for each column, we have a particular percentage that we've calculated. So if you recall from the class session, how we calculated this, where we divided 100 by 12 and we got 8.33%. 100, and once we multiply, when you multiply this times 2, you get this. Multiply times 3, you get 25%. So at the end, when you get to the 12 multiplication, you're going to find out that you'll be having 100%. And this means that for each code, if you take a code from here, that's a column, and apply it to a particular element, it's going to take this particular percentage of the screen. So no matter how much elements, as long as you apply this code, it's going to adjust according to the percentage that the code has. So if we apply this code tree to a particular element, it's going to take the width of 25%. This, for example, we're applying the code tree. So this is only going to apply to bigger screens because we've set the mean width to 600 px. So which means that once the screen size is above 600 px, it's going to take this width percentage that we've set in this grid here. But when it's below, then we can it's going to change the display. So we can as well create another media query for that, for a smaller screen size. So first, I just want us to see the one for the larger screen size. Then when we're done, we can add the smaller screen size for when we reduce the screen to maybe a mobile device screen size. All right, so now let's start applying styles to the content we have on the page. So here we have first the logo, and the class is called logo. So I'm going to start with the logo, and just to make sure that the size of the logo is an actual size of the logo, I'm going to set the width first of all to 100%. So we know that we have the exact size of the image itself. And now we want to apply styles to the general header. So let's start with the background color, text color of white, adding to make sure that there are spaces around the content inside the header. So this is 20 px for top and bottom, or let's make this 10 px top and bottom. And for the left and right, I don't want any spaces. And now the width of the header should be 100%. So I want it to take the whole width of the header area. And to remove, okay, let's save this and we'll see how this. So we have the brown background, and we haven't styled the content inside, just gave it a background color, made sure the text are white, and gave a padding for top and bottom of 10 px. So when we add more styles to this header, we're going to see how this looks. So to remove all default spaces from the top, I'm going to reset it to 0, and the left as well. I'm going to make sure that the header starts from the very top and the beginning of the left side of the page. So I'll reset it to 0. So this might not be too noticed here, but sometimes most of these elements have their own default spaces. All right, so next we are going to add styles to the nav bar. So the nav bar here is a class for the nav elements, and it holds the image and the navigation links. So let's add some styles to it. So in order for the display to look more inline, instead of what we have here, we're going to change the display to flex so we can make sure it's adjustable. And we're going to use the justified content to put a space between the content so that there'll be a space between. So first, I'm going to save this and refresh this page. Okay, so sorry, I have to set the justified content space between. So I want them to have spaces between the content, and I want to align all the items to the center. So I'm going to refresh the page. It's not right. Okay, so the class navbar was not spelled correctly. Okay, so now I have the flex display displaying inline, and the space between, and also the items are aligned at the center of the container. So we're going to style each of the contents separately to make them display better. So I could just add the padding for the sides. So the top and bottom are already padded from in the header. So I'm just going to make sure the sides have their own padding. Now let's style the contents that are inside the nav. So the first one we have here, we have the logo container. Oh, okay. So we have done that before. So I'm just going to continue from there. Display should be flex. So this is for the logo container. So I made the logo, the contents inside to be flex. That's why the text that is attached to the logo is now display inline. So now, because this page is not wide enough, we're not saying the complete, but we want to make sure it's responsive. So this is why we are trying to make sure we understand how to make use of the grid view layouts. So you see, this is how it displays on a wide screen, but we want to make sure everything is responsive in a smaller screen. So we're going to apply some styles before using the grid layout. Now, okay, so we've applied to the logo. Let's apply to the image itself, the logo image. And here we have the class as logo img. Now the image itself, I want to reduce the size. So the width now would be, let's use 50px. So this is for the image itself and not the image container. Now you see the size of the image is smaller, so it now has more space for other contents. We can also make sure that there's space. So let's just add a little space between the text and the image. So I want to add the margin to the right and just use 10px. So now we have the logo and the name of the screw. All right, so let's keep adding more styles to this header. Now we also have this text. We can add a class to the text. We'll call this logo text. All right, so let's reduce the size. So I'll reduce the size to, let me use 16px. I think it should be okay. All right, now let's go next to the nav menu. For the nav menu, we want to style the list. Now, as well, this display will be flex, so we can flexibly position the content. And since it's a list, I want the list style type to be none. So I'll save this and refresh the page. So we don't have the list style type, and it's now displayed inline because we changed the display to flex. And next, I want to make sure that the text are aligned to the center. So these are just depending on the type of page you're creating. It might not make any difference when you apply them to your own page, unless it requires that design. So this is just because this is the type of page I want to create. All right, now we're done with the header. We're still going to add more styles. So this is where the class inside each of the lists comes in. So we have a class called navlink, and we're going to use it to make sure that the links are displayed properly. So now there are no spaces between them, so I'm going to use a margin left. We could use any space size we want. So let's see how 50px looks like. So this is what 50px gets us. Adjust it to 30px. I'm going to change the color to white. You could make sure each of them has a padding of 10px. Or there won't be need for this. Now, I think this is enough for the header. Now we can see how the header is displayed. It's now looking more like the heading of a web page. So also we need to remove the underline from the link. So check the text decoration to none. All right, so I'm not going to style these links because we don't have any pages yet, and there won't be need to style on this illustration. So let's go straight to the other contents on the page. So first, in the section, we have the aside. So let's create style for the aside. I just want the background color to be different. Let's use gray, and we're just going to do the same for the main, since these are the only two content or structural elements we have. I want the text to be aligned to the center. And then we also have main image class. So for the image inside the main. So now remember when we said to make an image responsive, we use the max width. So you see this image is not responsive. It's currently taking the whole space and pushing out contents from the page. So I will use the max width, and first of all to make sure that the width is the actual width of the image. So I'm going to use 100% for this. So I've reduce the size to 100%. So the 100% here means that the image is going to take the screen size spaces. So if it's reduced below this size, it still tries to adjust, and if it's increased, the screen size increases, it still tries to adjust. So this is why the max width is more responsive. In the height, I'm just going to set the height to auto, so I don't have to adjust it. It's adjust according to the page itself. So this is a very long image. I use this intentionally so we can see how the page would look like when we start adding the grid view. So last year is for the footer. Yeah, I'm just going to align the text to the center and change the background color to brown. Okay, now this is where we want to add the grid view content, the grid view layout. We are going to make sure that these contents take particular position using this percentage we have in the codes or the grid view. So first we want to adjust the header. Now we have two classes there. We have the row and we have the col. So just because of the properties we have in the row, when we use the class row, it's going to make sure that these properties take effect. So it clears both sides and makes sure that there are no overlapping other contents around, and make sure that it displays table. So just to make sure that the borders is the whole content itself is equal in borders. So now we use the row before we start applying the columns. So in this same class, I want to make this column. I want to make this nav container. Okay, so we're not going to do that inside here because we've already positioned this properly. So I'll do this in the section. So this would be a row, and the aside we have a col. So you can decide which of the col you want to use. So depending on the amounts of space you want a particular content to take. So here I have smaller contents in the aside, so I'm going to use a col. We are trying to make sure that the screen takes a row for a particular, the columns for a particular row, must be 12 or 100%. Must be 12 when you combine the columns, or 100%. So here we're going to use 3. So that means automatically we will need to use 9 for the next elements, because we only have 2, the aside and the main. So I'll be using a 9 here. Now this is intentional because I really want the main to take more spaces on the page. So I'm going to set this class to col 9. So just for reference, the col 3 is 25% and the col 9 is 75%. So if you add up 25 to 75, it gives us 100. So that's why we must take note of distance. So I'm going to refresh the page, and now you see the sidebar is taking the 25% of the screen, and the main taking the rest 75%. So this is just a quick way to use the grid view layout. So we can as well add this to, if we have more content on the page, we can add to them as well. So yeah, sorry, is there any question? Does everyone understand so far? Does everyone understand?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. All right. So I think this is enough for today because of time. We spent too much time. So we're going to end this class here. Just one more thing, reference to the assignments. So I want to set this position to fixed. So when we so the fixed affected this, but this brings out the puts the header element an index of 1 automatically. So because it must display in front of other content. So this is for maybe a page where we need constant or easy navigation. So you see how long this page is. So before a user could scroll back to the top to find the navigations, it's best if we have something this easy. So you can always go to another page of choice. For this kind of situation, if you want to fix this, you could set a margin for the contents below and give it a margin top of a particular space. So let's say for section, margin top, let's use 150 px. So if I refresh the page, now it's not going to be overlapping, but it's still fixed. All right, so if you have any challenges, always feel free to reach out to us, and I wish you success in your assignments. All right, have a lovely weekend, everyone.